Hello everyone, welcome back to Scott Makes Games. Today we are diving deep with spoiler cautious care into Hollow Knight Silksong, the long awaited sequel to one of the most beloved indie Metroidvanias ever made. We'll look at what's new, what's improved or changed, what's familiar and how critics and players alike are reacting to the release. First, quick recap. Hollow Knight, back in 2017, was built by Team Cherry, a small indie studio, and became a modern standard in the Metroidvania genre. Tight combat, exploration, haunting atmosphere, minimalistic storytelling, it's a game that rewards patience and discovery. Silksong was originally conceived as DLC for Hollow Knight, but over time it ballooned into a full game of its own. The project took several years, and the hype built to legendary heights. When September the 4th, 2025 finally arrived, the digital storefronts such as Steam, eShop, etc. struggled under demand. Many players reported site crashes and errors trying to buy the game. And that's just the start of the story. As a fun fact, Steam Achievement Tracker suggests Silksong is about 50% larger in achievement count than Hollow Knight. So already we know this is not just a small expansion, it's a full evolution. Okay, the mechanics. What's new, what's changed, and what feels familiar to Hollow Knight veterans. In Silksong, you play as Hornet, a character known from the first game. She's more agile, more acrobatic, and the whole world is built around her speed. Hornet's sprint is much faster, letting you zip through, backtracking faster than the Knight in Hollow Knight. Her jump has better fine control, you'll feel your vertical mobility is more sensitive, especially in midair. The dive attack, which in Hollow Knight was a vertical pogo, has been reworked. Hornet's dive is diagonal, more like a missile forward. It's a subtle but mighty change, altering how you chain combos and position yourself. Because of these changes, platforming is more demanding in many sections. Diagonal pogo jumps, precise aerial repositioning, and tricky apexes come into play. Silksong introduces several new systems layered into the core combat. Silk is a new currency you collect by hitting enemies or interacting with objects. It's used for healing, restoring 3 hit points, and for Silk skills, powerful special attacks. Silk skills are unlocked as you progress and are tied to remnants of the Weavers / their civilization in the world. Hornet can only equip a certain number of Silk skills based on Crest, which we'll talk about in a moment. Tools are items you craft / unlock. They come in 3 colours or categories: blue tools and yellow tools, which are the support type, and red tools, which are generally offensive. Each tool has limited uses and must be manually triggered. Crests are akin to build styles. Choosing a crest determines how many tools, Silk skills and modifiers you can equip. Each crest may alter tool usage, attack speed, or replenish rules. Benches, the rest points in the game, remain critical. They are where you heal, respawn, and adjust your loadout, tools, skills, crests, etc. Also, Hornet gradually acquires more movement options, true to the Metroidvania tradition. For example, the Needle Throw, a grappling / horizontal mobility tool, a cloak for upward wind-assisted movement, and wall climbing. Because Hornet is more mobile, many encounters are tuned around fast, aggressive play. Enemies and bosses have in many cases been made more nimble, with more complex patterns, dodges, leaps. The design expects you to keep moving. Damage is more punishing in many fights. Many bosses deal 2 damage per hit, and Hornet starts with fewer hit points. You'll often die in a few mistakes. That said, critics note that in early fights, the difficulty sometimes is slightly more forgiving than earlier Hollow Knight bosses. I don't know if this is before or after the updates, but it seems like things have changed. Runbacks, the path back to a boss after dying, are more demanding in some cases. Long platforming segments, enemy gauntlets, or tricky sections often must be re-navigated repeatedly. One more wrinkle. When you die, you leave behind a silk cocoon. If you can return to your death spot, you reclaim your silk, your resources. Fail and it's lost. Similar to Hollow Knight's essence / currency loss mechanic, but it's somewhat less punishing since there's no leveling up to lose. While Silksong brings many changes, it's crucial to see the continuities. What makes it a Hollow Knight at heart? The world is beautifully hand-drawn, layered backgrounds, moody lighting, and a strong sense of scale and depth. Reviewers praise its environmental details, architecture, and background art. The atmosphere and audio design remain top tier. The soundtrack has been called haunting, playful, endlessly beckoning. Music cues, ambient sound, and silence are used just as powerfully. Exploration and non-linearity are still key. Instead of a strictly linear path, you can deviate, take side quests called wishes, and discover optional areas. NPCs and lore are subtle. Silksong doesn't hold your hand, except more so than Hollow Knight in some respects, and much of the story and world is revealed through environmental storytelling, cryptic dialogue, and optional lore digging. Resting benches, map systems, checkpoints, these staples are retained, though some services now cost more, rosary currency, etc. So the feel is similar, the pain, the wonder, the sense of gradual mastery, but layered with new systems to refreshen the experience. But with big ambition comes big risk. Let's talk about difficulty, friction, and criticism. Many critics and players note, Silksong is, on average, harder than the original. Early bosses hit harder, patterns are more aggressive, and some sections demand near-perfect execution. One review from Games Radar phrases it as a bit tougher out the gate, but Game Informer suggests that early bosses might be slightly more forgiving than the very early Hollow Knight bosses. The tension between challenging and punishing is felt. Sometimes, the long runbacks and tough platforming can feel like padding or frustration. In interviews, Team Cherry has been acknowledging difficulty spikes and attributes them partly to the player's freedom to deviate and reach harder areas early. One major controversy, the simplified Chinese location. The translation has been criticised as overly stylised, anachronistic, and tonally off. As a result, in China, the game currently holds a mostly negative or mixed rating on Steam. Team Cherry has publicly acknowledged the issue and promised improvements. At launch, some bugs and issues were reported, as often happens in ambitious games. For example, overpowered Threadstorm, a Silk skill, got nerfed in a later patch, and many small fixes, out of bounds, softlocks, were applied. One glitch in the speedrunning community allows Hornet to become a near invincible flying god by duplicating Hornet at the moment a boss dies, giving infinite silk and clipping through walls. Patch notes mention better controller support, DualSense Edge, pause on disconnect, bug fixes involving Crust Knight, Can, Seth, and spool fragments. So far the community reception to patches is positive, though veteran players bemoan the nerf of one of the strongest skills. Because some upgrades, damage boosts, health increases, are relatively scarce, fights can sometimes drag when bosses have large health pools, but minimal incremental damage upgrades exist. Additionally, many services, fast travel, maps, benches, require rosary currency, and when you're struggling, resources are tight. Some critics argue that repeated grinding and resource management can feel tedious. All of that said, many feel the game's strengths still outweigh its frictions when you're in the zone. It's just to get there, you'll need patience. So after the hype and the tweaking, how is Silksong landing? On Metacritic, the game is scoring in the universal acclaim bracket. OpenCritic reports 97% of critics recommending the game. Famitsu reviewers in Japan awarded it a 32 out of 40, each 8 out of 10. Many praise that Silksong is more ambitious in scale and systems, while retaining the soul of Hollow Knight, being generous, atmospheric, and challenging. Art design is a favourite. Reviewers highlight depth, layering, and stunning backgrounds. Soundtrack and ambience also get strong praise. The low price also gets a mention. For a game of this scope, the $20 price with Game Pass Day 1 availability also is regarded as generous and accessible. Critics say Silksong captures the essence but feels different enough and is fluid, fast, polished. In the first hours, over 1,500 Steam reviews were already overwhelmingly positive, but Chinese players heavily impacted global review scores due to the translation issues. In many regions, the game peaked over 500,000 concurrent players on day 1 and broke into the top 10 most played games on Steam. Speedrunning communities have already started rooting the game, and with glitches like the Flying God trick being discovered, the game's runtime records are expected to plummet further. Some complaints centre on difficulty spikes, repetitiveness in runbacks, and the occasional grind. Still, within a few weeks of release, players are still calling it one of the best sequels or indie releases of the year. Alright, so what do I think? Here are some of my reflections. The decision to build the game around Hornet's agility is smart. It changes how every combat encounter plays, from micro-positioning to macro-routing, without losing the tension of one mistake kills you. The layered systems, crests, tools, silk skills, add replayability and build flexibility. They also mitigate some of the sameness hazard that sequels often hit. The difficulty and friction points are real. Long runbacks, punishing bosses, and scarce upgrades can fatigue more casual players. I'd love to see optional adjustable modes or more forgiveness in access design. The controversies around localization remind us that every piece of a game, not just mechanics, must be polished. A small translation mishap can sour the experience for entire audiences. Patches will matter. The nerf to Threadstorm and multiple bug fix patches already show that the dev team is listening. My verdict: Silksong is not just more Hollow Knight, it's a refined, ambitious evolution. For players looking for deep challenge, exploration and layered systems, it's a gem. For those who find the original too daunting, be prepared. Silksong ratchets things up, but it's so often thrilling when it's clicking. And that's my look at Hollow Knight Silksong. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss my upcoming videos, and share the video with your friends. What do you think? Is Silksong better than Hollow Knight? Too hard? Just right? Let me know in the comments. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.